transaction. And it's going to be, again, the way I always teach is an open forum where I want participation and I want your input on things. What do you think is the main reason for your deals falling apart right now? Don't all talk at once.
Well, I've had a little trouble selling my listing. It's under contract again, but before that, it's had at least 2 that have fallen out of escrow because of repairs.
Right, and that is one of the main causes. I think the main reason is communication. That seems to be the most common denominator in deals that are apart right now, is that people aren't communicating, agents aren't communicating with their clients and informing them of what's happening in the marketplace right now and ways that they can think, things they can do to try to keep things together. What are the other areas? What are you seeing? I'm seeing communication, appraisals, benzers, the repair requests from the benzer portion itself, financing in general.
I think, well, definitely with VA financing, there's been some changes that have happened recently that have affected borrowers' ability to actually close.
Correct.
So that's kind of out of our control, unfortunately.
Right.
I know that I've told my whole team to talk to every single one of their the lenders on regardless of what side of the transaction you are on.
Mm-hmm.
But call the lenders and make sure that everything's on track, especially for your VA buyers right now, because the regulations have changed.
Exactly. And I think that's what's so critical. That's why I keep saying communication is the number one thing, is that if you talk to your clients, talk to the lenders, talk to every party involved in this transaction, because what was status quo and worked before may not be working right now, especially with lenders. And I think that's so important that you're doing that, Josh. I think that your deals will probably stick together more than others because of that. And it also gives them a chance then to maybe flip to a different type of financing if they can, maybe go to a different lender. And I don't know how many of you heard what Deb said on our call the other morning, or maybe it was Aaron, I don't remember, about automatic underwriting versus manual. If your deal cannot go through automatic underwriting right now, it's probably not going to close. So that's a conversation to have with your lender also early on in the process. One of the other things I forgot to mention is what I'm seeing now too is a lot of buyer's remorse. They're having second thoughts because of what's happening out there. They may be feeling pressure from family and friends, or even just the media, that maybe they shouldn't be buying right now, even though it's really still a good time to buy. So that's something you can handle upfront in your buyer consultation and talk about that they may be feeling more buyer's remorse than normal under these circumstances, and figure out ways that, some dialogue to handle that. What would you guys say? What would you say to that, Sheree, if they asked you that?
Gosh, what would I say? Fortunately, I haven't had to deal with that yet.
Yeah, you probably will, though.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot. This is, like I said, this is a small group of 6. It's a pretty safe group. If you don't want to talk, you don't have to. But you may just explain COVID and explain what's happening, and that it's normal to feel extra anxiety during these times, that it's still a really good time to buy. You can talk about, again, interest rates. You can also say the seller's feeling the same anxiety that you are, and they're probably just as anxious about the transaction as you are, and that they may be feeling some pressure. So that the better communication with all parties, the better the deal's going to go. I mean, there's all different things you can do to just kind of bring it to the forefront so they're not afraid to talk about it.
Yeah, I think that you have to be the one that addresses it up front and first.
Yeah.
Because they're already feeling it, they're already thinking it. Mm-hmm. And so I think if you just, you bring that up, then it's not as awkward for them.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I even have conversations with my buyers at the buyer's consultation that when we're showing property, and if you need to use the restroom, speak up, or, things like that. We need to have it. I mean, basically, they're afraid to ask you sometimes. They don't want to say anything. So the more you can bring up that it's a safe place for them to talk and express their feelings, the better they're going to communicate. And wouldn't you rather hear it, day 4 or day 5 versus day 25 if they're having second thoughts? There's so many things you could do at that point to try to salvage the deal.
I think if I can say one more thing, Lisa, going back to what you're talking about, why deals are falling through, and a lot of it's regarding repairs and benzers.
Mm-hmm.
We're advising our sellers to just accept the benzer, just do the repairs, because if this buyer walks away, then you're going to have to disclose it anyway to the next buyer.
Mhm.
And buyers are a lot more, they're a lot more apt to walk away right now. So you just got to do the repairs. Just swallow the frog, get it done. The other thing we're doing is we're advising many of our sellers to do a pre-listing inspection before
Mhm.
even putting it on the market. And when we shift to a buyer's market, that's going to become even more important. So
Yes.
having those inspections up front so the seller knows what they're getting into, and addressing the repairs is going to make the transaction a lot more bulletproof once you get a contract.
I agree. I've had that backfire on me only one time when we did the outward appearance of the house was pristine. I mean, you would think that there was nothing wrong. So I said, yeah, let's do this. We got into the inspection and there was like thousands and thousands of dollars worth of repairs, which of course would have come up anyway when the buyer did their inspection. The seller was furious with me for suggesting that. And I said, it's just not a surprise. This is going to come up when they do it. So now we can address it up front and maybe even adjust our price and deal with this. So I think that you're right on the money on that. We have to be more conscious of what state the house is in before it's marketed at this point, and that the sellers are going to have to do more than they were expecting to do probably. And also buyers, I mean, again, you need to also tell your buyers or caution your buyers that this is not an open forum to like take advantage of a seller either. I guess it's just common courtesy on both sides,
Yeah, I think going back to communication, as the day that, if you're the listing agent, the day that you get the offer or the contract in from the buyer's agent, have that realistic conversation with them about, what to expect for the Binzer. I think it's important that we coach the buyer's agents too. So we know what the seller's expecting to address and what we're expecting to get from them, and then they can relay that to the buyer so that there's not a laundry list.
Right. Exactly. And again, yeah, like you said, open communication, because if you talk to the buyer's agent and they say, oh yeah, my client really doesn't care much about any repairs, then right off the bat, you're probably going to get a decent Binzer. But if they say the buyer's very picky and is going to be looking at everything, you can get your seller set up for possibly having a higher level of repairs required. But yeah, definitely, I think having your clients prepared to spend a little bit more money right now to get a deal closed is a good point, a good way to keep it bulletproof.
The other thing is our contracts say that home inspections are due to us upon receipt, or well before the Binzer.
Yes.
So I would, if as a listing agent, I would recommend that you call your buyer's agents and ask them for the home inspection reports before the Binzer. That way you can present those to your seller and be proactive on the things that actually need to be addressed, so that the buyer feels like the seller's already taking a proactive approach and is going to work with them instead of the buyer just walking away.
Exactly. I mean, my only fear on that is that if they did repairs that they didn't ask for, I mean, they're no worse off, because like you said, if it falls apart, they're probably going to end up doing those anyway. But that's one thing that we are lacking in our communication with the other agents, is most of them are not getting you those reports when they're due by contract. They're doing it, sending them over with the Binzer. And I've been guilty of that myself. But I always ask for them as a buyer's agent. I mean, as a listing agent, when those are done, I want a copy of them.
I thought they were supposed to all be sent at once.
No, if you read the contract, it's as they're done. So each inspection, as it's done, needs to be sent to the other party.
Okay.
Yeah. I know. Some of the timelines, and that's what we need to do, is another timeline class, I think, because it's people have gotten away from the timelines because the market's been so brisk that they've been able to kind of be a little sloppy on timelines. And that's another sure way to lose a transaction, is to miss a date. Josh is chuckling. We just had that happen not too long ago. Not him, but yeah, we talked about it. So, yeah. What about if you're talking about financing and different things that you can do to help your buyer keep their deal together? What would you be looking at in your loan package and things like that when you're talking to the lender? What kind of things would you be looking for? Charity, you're muted. Are you talking?
Sorry, I'm trying to get schoolwork done too.
Oh, I didn't know if you were talking to us or not. I just saw your lips moving, so no worries.
But I missed the question.
Oh, it's okay. I was just saying, right now, to try to keep your deal more bulletproof, when you are talking to the lender, what kind of questions are you going to be asking other than, your basic ones that we've always asked? Are you going to be asking more about, how solid they are? What, how solid is their job? Is there anything, is it manual, is it manual versus automatic underwriting? Can they qualify for a conventional? If it's a VA or something, could they qualify for a conventional if necessary? You need to have some strategies in place to fall back on in case that deal starts going south. The last thing you need is at the very end to have, fall apart because of VA, like we had one the other day, and there's nothing you can do about it. You can try to flip it to another lender, but there's no guarantee that anybody will even extend the contract at that point. And how many people? Go ahead, Sam. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I was going to say I tend to ask those questions even when we're not in a COVID situation, because I'm sort of obsessive compulsive that way. So the buyers, even when you ask the question, I have a buyer who we're halfway through this deal. It's supposed to close on Thursday. And 10 days ago, we find out that she had a bankruptcy and that she's still married, even though she said she wasn't. She's actually still married. So, I've asked all those questions before too, beforehand. I asked her, is she married? She's like, no, I'm not married. But they actually
too, so it's a little more serious.
Yeah, so we tried. This was a big shock to the lender and to me when all this, and it's going to be okay because the husband is cooperative and the bankruptcy is a couple of years old and she's complying with her stuff. But 10 days ago I was like, okay, this is it. I have to get a job. I'm not cut out for this.
And it's not you, and don't let that. You're going to have some super easy ones, and you're going to have some super hard ones, and those are the ones you learn from and become a better agent. If they're all easy, you don't learn at all.
True.
No, those are questions you need to be asking. You're doing a great job. Those are important questions.
Lisa, I think it's really important too that you're really reviewing the pre-qual that comes with the offer.
Yes.
Two things: make sure you have an Arizona pre-qual because the contract number 1 requires it. But the Arizona pre-qual is really good because the lender has to verify that documents have already been submitted from the buyer. And if the buyer hasn't submitted those documents, that's really important to understand and know, because that means all they've done is a simple credit check.
Right.
And that doesn't tell the whole story.
It doesn't.
I think we really need to be looking at those pre-quals and making sure the pre-quals are sufficient.
And that they're completely filled out, and that also that the buyer has signed them. If the buyer does not sign the bottom of that pre-qual, they are not giving you permission to share that. So you cannot share that pre-qual with the other agent until that buyer has signed it. It's given you permission to share it and the lender permission to move them to the next step. So you really need to take a look at that. I've seen pre-quals where they've got incorrect information too. Like in Cherie's case, I've seen them where they say that the person's either single or married when they're not. And those are things you need to look at. If that pre-qual came back and said they're married, there's your red flag right there. There may be something about discharging a bankruptcy or something on there. Again, there's another huge red flag right now. So just really read those as well. I'm seeing that people just get them. And like I said, I'm as guilty as this in the past too. You get one and you pass along with your contract, but you don't look at it first. You really need to take the time to scrutinize that, Josh. That's a really good idea. Also, are you all looking at every document that the lender's sending to the buyer? Are you asking them to let you know when they get things? And because sometimes you're really not a party to that part of the contract, but it's really important to know if the buyer gets something that they need to fill out or that there's information requested, that you need to know what that is. Because again, it can give you a heads up that there's a problem coming, or that the buyer doesn't have the documents needed to get the loan done. You don't want to wait, so you can't wait till the last minute anymore on things like that. And same with the seller. How many of you have gone to the closing table and your seller hasn't filled out the seller packet? Probably a lot of you, right? Yeah. Now I'm actually asking people to call their seller, and when they get that packet, and go through it with them if they can, and make sure that it gets submitted. Because again, there could be something there. Maybe the seller's married still, or maybe there's something, there's a lien against the property they don't know about, or there's something going on that could hold up the transaction. it's really important to know all of that up front. All the stuff, like I said, that we could possibly resolve in a day or two, it may not be able to be resolved quickly now, especially with, you know, the remote notaries, and everybody's working from home. You may not have resources that you have available normally. I don't know. I mean, are you guys feeling you're getting the same volume of work done at home that you were at the office?
Mhm.
Are you? I'm not. I don't feel like I am. I miss my people. I miss, I'm getting more phone calls. So I'm actually getting more time with people on the phone and stuff, but it's not what I consider productive time necessarily. So. Hope, you've been really quiet. You have anything you want to add?
I typed in the chat that I did have a question.
Oh,
So
okay.
I just now typed it up. I wanted to let you know that I made every effort to keep on top of LSUs and what have you. I was just going to share with the group that I got an LSU that everything was fine on April 3rd. And then as of April 6th, my client decided to go FHA, or not my client, the one on the other side decided to go FHA back to conventional. And his business had slipped so much that they would have had to provide new docs, and he simply wasn't qualified anymore. So that one was really kind of a heartbreaker because it was a deal fell through for that. But that was really unfortunate. So I just wanted to say, even though you can make really great efforts with an LSU, things are just changing day to day, almost hour to hour with
Yeah.
people. And
Yeah, be cautious about that too when you're changing things. You know, in the past, if somebody wanted to change from cash to conventional or something, no one really sweated it that much. You just, as long as it didn't cost your seller anything. But now what it's doing is it's allowing them to get a loan denial then. Whereas with cash, there was no denial process. I had that happen twice last week where the agents, the buyers and sellers had agreed to switch the type of financing, and then it fell apart because they got a loan denial. And they said, is that fair? Real estate's not fair, folks. You know, is it legal? Yes. Is it ethical and fair? Probably not. But both parties allowed it to happen.
right. Okay, it's bringing up another question though that I have, since the house is back on the market and it is as is. A fellow agent is inquiring for her client, and she's asking me to provide inspection reports, to which I don't have them because the buyer at the time for that particular property that we're talking about is a contractor, and he did his own inspection. So he bypassed that whole process. I did get him to send in their termite and the ones that they did do. But the point of it is, I don't believe that I have to provide anything to this new agent because there was nothing found. I mean, what is your stance on that?
Well, first of all,
It doesn't.
the inspection report belongs to the buyer. Once it's
Right.
submitted, you can pass that along with the seller's permission, but you need to redact any information that identifies the buyer. So you can't pass anything along with the buyer's name on it or any contact information for them. Also, you know, you need to encourage the new buyer to do their own inspections because things can change. That was at a point in time. The other thing that you need to realize is all contracts are as is right now. So by using verbiage as is, you don't need to add that. Every single contract is as is, but every buyer has the right to do an inspection.
Right. Okay. So there were things that did come up on FHA because it was FHA that came up on the condition. So does my client have to report any of that? In other words, an inspector didn't point it out. An appraiser said, you may want to look at a couple of these things.
Does the seller now know about it, and is it visible and you know, apparent? If it's so, yes, they do need to disclose it.
So we should update the SPUDs possibly.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you.
Not
again-
possibly update the SPUDs.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Just be cautious about, you know, passing other reports along. Just make sure that, you know, that all parties are aware that you're doing it. I don't always do it. It depends on what the seller wishes me to do.
Well, and in the case if there wasn't inspections and the
you can
prospective
ask.
buyer
Yeah.
did his own, then I can report that there's no inspections.
Right, that's all you have to say. It's, yeah. And it's each buyer's individual responsibility to do their inspections. It's not your responsibility to provide them with them. So if they want to waive their rights to do their own inspections, that's on them. That's short-sighted, especially in this market. What do you
Thank
think?
you.
I think that'd be a red flag to me if in this market the buyer didn't want to do inspections. What do you guys think?
Just make sure they sign the disclosure.
Right.
And make sure on the Binzer, when they do fill it out, asking for things, that they also sign page 2 where it says that they didn't have an inspection done.
Thank goodness I did do those things. I got those in place.
Good for you. Awesome. I figured you did.
It's because of the broker hotline. You guys are so helpful.
Thank you. Yeah, we're getting a lot of calls. Sometimes I know you guys have to wait, but I have one. Somebody called me at 2 in the morning. I did not answer, just saying. Yeah. Again, we'll be available 8 to 8, Monday through, well, 7 days a week. But after that, we're not going to take calls after that anymore. I think that that's fair. How do you guys feel about that as far as timing for that?
I think 8 to 8 is great for me. I did think it was 7 to 7 last week. So sorry, I think I called it 7:45.
That's okay. You and everybody else, it's no big deal. What I'm just trying to do is we're trying not to answer them during those off hours. And it's hard because I'm up anyway. And so quite often I'll just go ahead and grab it. But I feel like if we don't make the effort to at least follow our own rules, then why do I expect you to? So
You're training your agents.
I'm trying. Yeah, it's difficult sometimes. And, you know, you never know in real estate when you're going to have a problem. It may be 10 o'clock at night. The thing I've realized, and I know Josh probably has over the years, is that nothing good comes in trying to resolve it at 10 o'clock at night. Everybody's better off sleeping on that and working on it in the morning. Tensions are high. People are tired. There's no resources available if you need them. And it's much better just to say, we'll reconvene in the morning than try to solve it at night. And you may hear me say that if I do. If someone calls repeatedly at like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, I usually think that, you know, that someone was murdered in their home or something, you know, a real serious problem is occurring, not that they got something back that was missing a signature. But I do get those calls sometimes, you know. And so, you know, again, if you do need to call us after hours or even later in the evening, you know, please be courteous. That's all we ask. I'll start.
Lisa, I have another question, please.
Okay.
It's regarding liability if your seller doesn't always put their dog in a crate or their animal in a crate. Is it basically, is it upon the agent showing the property if they feel comfortable going out in the yard and being around the dog? I always wondered about liability. I never felt safe taking my clients in if there was dogs, whether they seem friendly or not.
Well, that's kind of off topic. I'll answer it real quick and then we'll get back to bulletproofing. It's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think that you need to put your safety and your client's safety first at all times. And if an agency is responsible enough to leave a dog loose in the yard that may or may not be friendly, I wouldn't show it. I wouldn't go in that yard, whether or not your client wants to. What do you guys feel about that? I think that, I know how much Josh loves dogs, so you know.
Well, I like dogs more than I like people. So from my point of view, that it's the dog's house, and if their owner didn't secure them, then I don't want my client doing anything that would make the dog uncomfortable too, because friendly or not friendly, the dog is going to defend the home.
Can react badly, just like the best person can act badly under the right circumstances. So, yeah, I wouldn't do it.
Thank you.
I actually had that happen once on Christmas Eve. I was showing someone houses, which of course I was not excited about. And we had an appointment to show the house, and we opened the door and there was a chow staring at us. They were supposed to remove the dog. And my buyer was super upset because she only had a couple of days to buy. I was upset because it's wrecking my Christmas Eve. And then the seller was mad because we didn't go ahead and show it. And yeah, that kind of circumstance, you know, could have been resolved by the seller doing what they said and securing the dog. But who knows? So maybe back to bulletproofing. Let's see, we've talked about checking in with your clients. We've talked about financing. We've talked about Binzer, talked about repairs. We haven't talked about appraisal. You guys want to talk about appraisal? Things you can do to try to keep it together at that point. We are seeing some appraisals coming in low now. That had not been the case for quite a few years. Also now that a lot of the appraisers they aren't going into the property. So you need to, as an agent, as a listing agent, you need to make sure that you provide them with enough information to be able to make a qualified appraisal. And that may mean a video, that may mean providing with extra documentation. Again, reach out to that appraiser and ask what you can do to help them do their job without being overbearing or stepping on their toes. Once the appraisal comes back low, it's much more difficult at that point to try to resolve a problem. What kind of things are you doing down in Sierra Vista, for instance, to take care of that? Are you having problems with your appraisers getting in?
No, they're just requesting that all doors be open and all lights be on,
Right.
and minimal contact.
Yeah.
So
And do you blame them?
in fact, I just had one of my personal properties, the one I live in, appraised last week, and it's a pretty big house. It's a large home. It's like 3,200 square feet, just the inside, and he was literally there for less than 10 minutes.
Wow. Yeah. And then you think, I mean, how much information can they glean in 10 minutes? Seriously. But they just want to get in and get out. The more you have available, the better for everybody.
It came in where we wanted us. So that was good.
It was good. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They're just in and out.
Yeah. When you do get an appraisal that's low, don't forget the timeline starts the minute they notify the buyer. So it's not you and not the other party. So the minute the buyer is notified that appraisal is in is when your 5-day timeline starts. You need to make sure that you have a conversation right away with the buyer. They may not understand what a low appraisal means. They may not understand if it did come in at sales price or not. So see if you can get that information. If it did come in low, you've got, like I said, 5 days for that buyer to cancel or to try to negotiate something with the other party. In this COVID market, it actually is working to your advantage to be able to use it as a negotiation tool. A lot of sellers are willing to come down a little bit or to do something different in order to get that property closed, because they know the next time it may be lower or it may be more difficult transaction at that point. But just make sure you do not miss that 5-day window to cancel that contract for your buyer. Anybody want to talk about appraisals? Any questions?
Lisa, I wanted to let you know it took 3.5 weeks to get our FHA appraisal back. Now I wasn't on the side of the buyer in that case, but it took a good 3.5 weeks, which I thought was very lengthy.
Yeah, and you can't wait to order appraisals right now. They need to be ordered as soon as possible.
Yeah, put that in your contracts. If you're countering an offer, put it in there that the buyer instructs the lender to order the appraisal upon contract acceptance.
Yep.
Stop waiting until the inspection period's over.
Which was never the intent of the contract anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's not acting in good faith.
No. Yeah, that became some buyer agent deal at some point where you don't order the appraisal till after the inspection, or maybe a lender came up with that idea. But it's
the
not.
lenders. A lot of times, it's amazing how many times I've had lenders call me, not my preferred lenders, but other lenders that say, okay, well, I'm waiting for the inspection before I order the appraisal. And I'm like, who gives you the authority to do that? That's not your prerogative.
Right. The buyer needs to instruct them to order it right away.
Right.
And again, I agree. I like your verbiage on that. If you're going to counter, I wouldn't counter just on that. But if you're countering anything else, it's a really good clause to add in there. Yeah. And that's another thing, if you want to talk about bulletproofing, is the difference between countering and an addenda. If there's more than price or terms to change, you may want to just do an addendum trying to change that. If it's price and terms and obviously major contract items, dates, you definitely need to counter. But other things you may be able to do by a conversation and then do an addendum to correct it. If it's not a total deal breaker, don't counter, because you may lose that transaction right now if you do that. So be cautious of that as well. But don't give up any of your clients' rights by being fearful of that. I would always counter if there's any concerns at all with like price, terms, dates, or anything that the buyer couldn't live without. Same with the seller. What are some other things we could do to Bulletproof? Picking your vendors. We all know we have preferred vendors that we work with. It's not our choice, it's our client's choice, of course. But if you have a deal and the other side picks a vendor that you know is problematic or that you've had issues with in the past, that may be worth a conversation right up front with that other agent, saying, you know what, I know you have the right to choose any vendor your client wishes to use, but I've had this issue with this vendor in the past. Can you make sure that they're aware of the timeline, or can you make sure they're aware of the scope of the project or whatever? Because you don't want to have a problem, 10 more days into it where you can't resolve it at that point in time. What else have we had problems with vendors? I mean, just people just not showing up, not doing their job, leaving things undone, like a Benzer repair request that is submitted and the repairing party, the vendor, the contractor does parts of it, but not all of it. But nobody looks at that receipt to see that if all those items were addressed or not until closing, when they're asking for the receipt at the walkthrough. And they're like, oh, wait, they left off 4 of the 7 items we asked them to fix. That's shame on you at that point. You aren't doing your job as an agent. You should have been up on that much further earlier in that conversation. What kind of steps have you guys put in place to try to make sure that stuff doesn't happen?
I think that our sellers are looking for us to be in control.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there's a fine line between advising and then also telling, right, what to do. But truly right now they're looking for professionals that know how to get the job done. So I strongly advise a lot. And I say, these are the vendors that I use. These are the people I trust. I know they're going to get the job done. And so this is why I recommend using them. And I would say 90% of the time they're okay with that, because they don't know what to do and they're looking for us to get the job done.
Right, exactly. And I think that's what's so critical is, and then again, if you have that conversation, your consultations, you say, listen, these are people I work with on a daily basis. You can use them or not use them, but these are people that I have confidence in. They're looking for your guidance. They are looking for that. What I don't want to hear you saying is my lender, my roofer, my, you don't want to use the term my, because that implies, well, not ownership, but it implies that there's more of a relationship there than there is. You could say my preferred vendor or my preferred roofer, or one of the roofers I recommend. You can do things like that. Just like they're not, you say my buyer, my seller. People own their clients, and it's really not the best way to talk about vendors and the clients both. But anyway, I digress on that. But working with people that you trust during these times is critical. And you may find that some of your vendors are struggling financially, and they may not be. Now's a really good time to have that conversation with them. How is your business doing? What systems have you put into place to keep your business functional? Are you able to get supplies you need? You may find out that a roofer can't get shingles. That's a problem if they're doing a job. Drywall or metal or different things like that may become scarce depending on supply lines and things like that. So again, have that conversation. Do they have the resources to do the job that you need them to do, and on a timeline that you need them to do it in? Because I'll look blank. Are y'all tired?
Lisa, I have a story that recently came up where we hadn't even received the Benzer yet, and I was talking with the other agent on the phone, and it seemed like they were wanting to wanted maybe to have a reduction in the sales price for a plumbing concern. They had done a septic scope, and they had 2 different quotes, one for $6,000 roughly, and another one for over $13,000, which was surprising. So I had encouraged my client to go ahead and get his own sewer scope. And if I may share with the group, I guess I already am, it was only a $300 repair. So the point of it is I was visiting with this agent. I hadn't even received a Benzer yet. And I learned a lot about just watching my verbiage and saying, go ahead and we'll wait and get the bins are submitted and my client will consider, you know, your Binzer, instead of kind of going back and forth. I'm not trying to get off topic. I'm letting you know, I found a great person that does sewer scope work, plumbing work. And had we gone with what the other side, you know, in this case was saying, that would have been, that's quite a large difference, you know, in price.
Yeah,
And
I'm actually
so
the scope, if it makes sense. One of the parties might have asked for maybe something more in depth was needed versus what your party was trying to do the least expensive and theirs was trying to get the most. So it really depends on what the buyer asked for too in that situation. But one of the things too I caution you is if the seller is not required to do any inspections for the buyer. So if the Binzer comes over and the buyer asks you to have seller investigate something, you don't have to do that. The seller doesn't have to investigate anything. That's the buyer's responsibility at the time of Binzer, and make sure that you address that, you know, in your response to that. But yeah, I can see that as obviously a big win for your seller. My personal skepticism comes into play. I'm like, when is it, you know, we're talking a $10,000 difference, what got left off? And is it going to come back to bite the seller later? And maybe nothing.
yeah, well, they got rid of the roots. I mean, the most expensive one was we're going to have to go under and do foundation work and go through the kitchen. That was the worst case scenario. But usually some of these things that I've seen, and had we received it back in a Binzer, is choice 1, choice 2, choice 3. I mean, as it turned out, their financing fell through. So it's just been an unfortunate chain of events with people losing financing. But anyway, a good experience for me to learn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thanks for being proactive. I think that's what we're talking about here, is taking the initiative to go the extra mile for your client right now. Can make all the difference when you're keeping the deal together and having it fall apart. So that was awesome. What are some other things? Okay, how about like triple checking your paperwork, making sure that you haven't left anything off the contract, that there's nothing missing. There's nothing worse, again, than getting to the closing table or close to that, and you realize that you thought you'd asked for something, but it's not on there, or after the fact. Josh, can I use an example of the, okay. Josh had one recently where the contract did not address the water softener. So if it's not excluded, it's considered a fixture. So the selling agent did not exclude it. But then on the actual spuds, they didn't address that as being either leased or owned. And after the fact, we found out the item was leased. We're still working on that, trying to resolve that issue. But those are things that in this market that we have now, you can't let those slide. You've got to be very diligent on making sure that if it needs to be addressed in the contract, and then double check against the spuds, and then double check, you know, at your walkthrough and things like that. I mean, those are things that are critical. Again, this is nothing that Josh did wrong, not a ding thing. It's just unfortunate that that it happened that way. But it could have been caught perhaps earlier. You have any input on that, Josh? Or do you...
Well, yeah. So the spuds addressed that there was a water softener, but they didn't mark that if it was owned or leased. We assumed it's owned because the contract says it conveys if it's owned. If it's leased, they're responsible for delivering a notice of leased items. But truly, I know you say I didn't do anything wrong, but the spuds said there was a water softener. I could have verified, and I should have verified if it was leased or owned. Now I went by what the contract did, you know, what the contract says, and the contract puts our side in the right. But I could have picked up the phone and, well, anyways, I could have done more verification, I guess. Although, I guess I did, and the listing agent said it was owned.
I know. No, I mean, in this case, like I said, I think Josh did a great job. I probably would have done the exact same thing he did. All I'm saying is that if it had been addressed at the spuds level, it wouldn't have gotten to closing without a resolution.
Right.
So just make sure you're double checking everything. If you get a spuds that's got any blanks on it, ask for clarification on that. things that we may take for granted that we just kind of glanced over in the past that maybe make the difference between your deal closing or not closing right now. So just take that extra time to do that. You know, again, a good Keller model, the win-win or no deal. How about that for your, you know, your right now to try to bulletproof your transactions? You know, everybody needs to feel like they're winning. Everybody needs to win in a transaction. What kind of systems would you put in place so that would happen? No one?
Lisa, I have a question about if you have clients, getting them on the same page. Like, for example, one client, or excuse me, the husband, let's just say, would want to make a concession or is willing to give up either, you know, say dollar-wise or something towards a Benzer process. I have a feeling he's more willing. And the wife, in turn, is digging in her heels. No, we'll just hold and wait. We can wait forever. We're not making any reductions. So, I mean, you know, you're talking about Bulletproof. I do think this is relevant, hopefully, to the group, just if you have a house divided and how to bring them together. And and I've tried verbiage such as, what would it be like, you know, what would it mean to you to be able to sell and make this amount of money, you know, which is, you know, what they wanted. We got your asking price, and make a small concession of, say, $3,000 towards repairs. And then you're able to have the next chapter. So I've tried to sort of appeal to that, but is there a way we can skin it other than take the weekend and you guys chat and let me know? We're matchmakers too, it seems.
We are. And one of the things I do is I will sometimes break it down into just dollars. You know, if we don't close this deal under these terms, you have another, how many more months do you think it will take to sell? How much are you going to lose if we don't spend the extra $500? So there's things you can do on that, and ask them again, do they think it's going to come up on the next transaction? If they do think it's going to come up again, or is it something that, a lot of times they'll say, well, I'm going to fix it afterwards. If it doesn't go through, I'll fix it. Why not fix it now? So just have that conversation with them. Yeah, I think that you're right on the money on that. Just make sure that you have the conversation. We are marital counselors quite often. And you need to find out what's the real objection. Are they objecting to the money? Is it the principle, which, you know, we all hear about? Is it, what is the objection, the true objection, and get down to the bottom of the problem. And then you can usually resolve.
That's true. And I asked a lot of thought-provoking questions very early on, and I don't want to say that they felt like they overpaid for the property that they're at, but in other words, they felt like maybe somebody stuck it to, so they want to dig their heels a little. And so I've had to tread lightly, but and then also, of course, Zillow says it's worth X amount. So of course, you know, so just changing expectations there too.
Exactly. And again, that's when you can provide a fresh set of comps for them, what's happening in our local market. And obviously it's only worth what a buyer's willing to pay for it in this market, and what an appraiser or lender's willing to lend on it. So those are things to take into consideration. The bottom line though is some people are stubborn and some people want to fight about everything. That's just the way they negotiate. Let them fight a little bit if they want. If they want to feel like they're, you know, going to fight you a little bit before they give in, that's fine. Who cares? Don't make it personal. I think that's the biggest, you know, takeaway from that is that everybody's got their own style of negotiation, and some people they feel like they have to win everything. So give them a win. Figure out a way to make it a win for them without anyone else losing. There's always a way.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. What else? I'm trying to think. Also on deals right now, when you're trying to keep your deals together, the most important thing we're trying to do is build relationships, right? We want to keep these people in our database. We want to make sure that these are clients for life. If you have to eat crow or give up a little bit to make that happen, it's probably worth it in this scenario. Where I normally don't ever suggest people cut their commission or contribute to a transaction. Those of you that have worked with me a while know that my job is to keep money in your pocket. You work hard for that. I don't want you giving it up easily. I don't want you undercutting your value. But sometimes you have to give a little bit. And in that situation, make sure that they know you're doing it. make sure that they know that you're doing it for them, not for you. That you're doing this as a value-added service in order to keep their trends, that you are not a party to this, you're keeping their transaction together and allowing them to buy or sell. I think that's really important. They think that a lot of times that agents are only in it for the money, and they need to know that you're in it for them. Well, that's about all I've got for bulletproofing. What do you guys have? Anything else you want to talk about regarding bulletproofing? Anything you think I missed or that you want to add to the conversation? No? Okay, we'll do a quick wrap up then. So what were the items we talked about again? It was what? Financing, communication, inspections and repairs, building relationships,
Appraisal.
appraisal, financing and appraisal, communication again, checking in with them regularly. I think I addressed that already, but that's like the most critical thing right there. The vendors, hiring good, working with quality people that you can trust during the situation. And again, knowing your stuff, knowing your contract, knowing your value and what you bring to the table, being able to, if you know the contract and know what's legal and what isn't, you may be able to solve a problem that with a workaround that the other agent may not even be aware as a resource. So that's kind of important right now. What else can you guys think of? Anything else that we left off? Nothing? Okay. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and sign off. If nobody has anything else, unless you guys want to just keep talking for 10 more minutes and have an open forum, whatever you'd like.
I appreciate the class. I need to go handle something right now.
Okay.
I hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you so much. Okay. In that case, what we'll do is we'll go into.
I'm sorry?
I can't hear them. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa.
Goodbye.
Thanks, Lisa.